Hello and welcome to our third newsletter for 2024. Thank you for tuning in, and I just want to let the people that reached out to this conversation and texted me or emailed me, I really appreciate the feedback. And anytime you have something that you would like to make a comment or give me some feedback, or if you have some information that you think we need to know, please feel free to reach out to us. You can always email me at Alisha@EpsteinJustice.com, or if it's on another topic, you can email info@EpsteinJustice.com. And, last month I talked about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and how important it was that this be a non-political issue. In other words, a bipartisan issue, because I think it's something that affects every single human being on this planet, whether they know it or not. And what is really interesting is in January, two senators, one from each side of the aisle, a Republican and a Democrat, introduced a piece of legislation that it actually is so good for victims of human trafficking. It is the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act of 2024. And what this act does is it allows, if you have been convicted of a crime, and we're talking a non-violent crime, it's not somebody that went and robbed a bank and said, I was molested when I was 4, so you got to let me go. Not that kind of thing. But if you have been convicted of a crime that directly relates and that you can show directly relates to the conviction, you have the opportunity for the court to review it and possibly expunge or seal that conviction, which is really important because I want to share with you, and this is not me, it's a survivor that I know and that I've worked with. She was actually first abused and trafficked when she was 6 years old. And by the time she was 16, she had a pimp that was actually, she was working the streets. And I mean, she had grown up in that. And by the time she was about 18, 19, she was able to escape. And I actually met her in college. And she completely turned her life around. She was a single mom. She was just getting ready to graduate from college and start a career. And as a single mom, the scholarships were ending, and she got scholarships. She worked for what she got. And right towards the last summer after graduation, she knew that she would have to get, at the very least, a part-time job to help make ends meet until she was able to get a full-time job in her career. And so she thought, okay, I'll do something that's open 24 hours so I can always get childcare and I can schedule work time when I need it. So she went to Walgreens to apply as a cashier. Pretty simple job. She has a college degree. You'd think that everything would be okay. Well, when she was, I believe, 17, she had a conviction for solicitation of prostitution. And believe me, she didn't want to be a prostitute. And she applied. They didn't ask her. And solicitation of prostitution is not a felony. So unless the job application specifically asks you, have you been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor, if they only ask a felony, she could legally say and honestly and truthfully say, no, I have not been convicted. But she did have that misdemeanor. And they did not tell her in advance that they were going to run a complete background check of misdemeanors, which includes traffic violations. And so they told her to, check back in a couple of days and we'll let you know if you got the job. And I was actually, she and I were running some errands and she asked if I would just stop by the Walgreens and she could see if she got the job. And she went in, and about 15 minutes later, she came out. I mean, and this girl's a tough girl. She came out in tears, just bawling. And I was like, what happened? she went to the manager who was at the counter, and she said, my name is, and I applied for the job, and you said, come back. And there were customers standing around. I mean, there were people, strangers just standing there. And he said, well, we did a background search on you, and we don't hire prostitutes. And that totally crushed her. I mean, it still makes me sad when I talk about it because that's just so unfair. And this bill will allow survivors to get things like that expunged. Because our goal is to integrate back into society and to make a place for them and to allow them to become functioning, healthy, happy adults that have jobs, that are able to build families. And, with those kind of tags, you just can't do it. So I would really appreciate it if you read my written portion of this audio. I have it down, and I put in several links because I studied this law. And this law is a good law. I looked to see what in this law, if there were any hidden things or if there were any addendums that, would throw something that's totally unrelated into it. But right now, as it stands, this law is pure and it's well written. It's very clear. It is clear in that it cannot be a violent crime. And you have to show that there is some type of direct relationship. And not only that, human trafficking isn't just sexual in nature. It can also be they bring people across the border and force them to work almost as slave labor just to pay off their passage. And so they make them, they'll give them fake IDs. Well, if they get caught by the police with a fake ID, who goes down for it? The person that's been trafficked, the slave. Or also human trafficking can be drug mules. I mean, we all know that there are organizations, illegal organizations, that will kidnap an entire family and say, you have to go do this or we're going to kill your family. So, of course, they're going to transport drugs across. They're not the ones making the money. And if they get in trouble, they go to jail, and God only knows what happens to the family. But if they can actually show that this is a direct relationship to being trafficked and to being forced into something, this at least helps them. It also allows the prosecutors to look at the circumstance and decide whether or not it should be prosecuted. Because if you're doing something wrong and you are the one that are intentionally doing it wrong, then you need to be held responsible. But if you're a slave, or if someone's threatening your family or threatening your life and you can prove it, then I think we need to make allowances for that. That's just basic human compassion. So I really would like it if you took a look at everything I've written, click on the links. You can read the law yourself. There's even a point where you can click the link, and I even tell you, you go to this other side and it will tell you exactly who your representative is. Because right now there's 16 states that are along with this. And once it gets passed to federal, then it's easier for states to enact the same legislation. So not only are you helping everyone on a national level, but you can be a part of helping the people in your state. So if you have any questions or any comments or anything like that, feel free to give me a shout out, and I really appreciate you. And thank you. You guys have a great rest of your month.